I do. Awesome. All right, so we have folks from Niagara, from Hastings, Prince Edward, Halton, Smith Falls. Awesome. Wonderful. Christina from Mississauga, thanks for letting us know where you're from. And Dean, how about you?
I come to you from Treaty 4 here in southern Saskatchewan. So, wonderful place where I get to live, learn, and laugh and play. Um, and enjoying a beautiful, beautiful sunny day here. And have had just a wonderful summer. So, yeah, that's where I come from.
Wonderful. And Brantford Six Nations, welcome, Amos. Thank you. Not far from where I am in Guelph, that's for sure. So you've shared where you're coming from. Why don't we start by introducing ourselves and then, sorry, Amos, were you gonna share?
No, I was just waving at you. Sorry.
Okay, no worries.
Just connecting. I like it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Susan, welcome from Three Fires Confederacy in Barrie. Terrific. Oh, I love this distribution of people from different districts and different areas of our province. That's fantastic. So why don't we share maybe in the chat what our roles are as well? We've located ourselves. And what do you do, where you're coming in from? And Dean, do you want to start? And then I'll introduce myself.
Yeah, I come to you again as from here from Saskatchewan, but my name is Dean Sharesky, and I am a senior consultant with Advanced Learning Partnerships, and we'll explain again who we are, and what and how we're why and who and why how we're here. But yeah, I'm an educator for classroom teacher for a number of years, and I've been supporting teachers and students in professional learning around North America for both the past decade. So doing a lot of traveling. Not right now, I'm not doing a lot of traveling, but that's been my role. So taught at post-secondary as well. So I got a wide variety of experience in education for sure.
All right, thank you. And I'm Brenda Sherry, as it says there. Also a longtime educator, all in Ontario, I guess. So 32 years in Toronto District School Board and Upper Grand District School Board here in Guelph. I spent 20 of my years as a classroom teacher and special education teacher, and then I became a technology coach and also a vice principal for a little bit of time, and worked at the ministry in a secondment for a little bit of time. And now I'm also a consultant with ALP. So really enjoying a new venture, rewiring, I call it, not retiring. And I also teach AQ courses around the integration of technology for Wilfrid Laurier University. So really great to see people from all over my province here. And we have high school, we have, oh, sorry.
No, yeah, there are lots of good people coming in. It's great to see all that variety, and that's just exciting. So this partnership, this is being brought to you largely through OECM. If you're not familiar with OECM, it's Ontario Education. Sorry, what does the OECM stand for now?
It's a consortium for purchasing,
yes,
and yeah.
That's right. So they do a lot of great work in terms of getting devices and resources at a discount for Ontario educators and institutions. And so that's what they did here. Purchased a plethora, if you will, of Dell technology. So that's Dell's job, and most of us would know who Dell is. So through that purchase of technology, they also were able to secure a number of professional learning days. And so these professional learning days have been designed in consultation with Ontario educators and have helped create and build all of this. So everything that you're seeing here, and Brenda, if you want to pop the link into the chat, which many of you probably have already been to, that's probably how you registered. But that link there has all of the sessions that are coming up, again, all free. And ALP is the professional learning organization who is leading all of this. So that's who we are, and that's how this all came to be. So we're excited about it, and we're again, this is the first one, so you're the testing ground of all of this. But if you have a look at that catalog, there are some amazing offerings. And just because I don't know why, well, I know why, is because we can offer you a few prizes, if you will. So we have a couple little prizes. I don't know. So Katina from Dell is actually going to be joining us very shortly. I'm trying to find there's my slide there with my link. I'm just going to paste the link in here. If you want to, you don't have to, but if you said, hey, I'd like a prize, and I think, just so you know what the prizes are, I think they're like a gift card for some place, so it'll be a digital card. But if you fill out that form with your name and your email, and we just ask you use your district or your organization institution email, we'll do a draw at the end, and you'll get a little gift card. So if you want to do that as a bonus, you can do that as well. So ALP, again, I am so honored to be able to work with them and for them. And these are our values that we want to make sure that we think about even as we present sessions, and the other work that we do is that we believe in the idea of perpetuating trust. And so that's a really important concept. And I think people, as educators, we always want to be able to build trust with our students and with one another. And so that's a important part. And we cherish the value of people. So beyond all the content that we do, we are just grateful that you're here, and we want to value each of you as individuals in whatever way we can, and that we take advantage of this opportunity, that when we have a chance to get together, we take the most of it. And we want to realize this and be grateful for the chance we get to learn. And again, as we've said, and we'll keep talking, Brenda and I will share, but we want to hear from you as well, and your great learning as well. And we do all of this with gratitude. So I feel really privileged and blessed to work for an organization and a company that has those values as their as the way in which they lead the work. So that's just, again, a little more who we are.
And as Dean mentioned, we really invite your participation during our collaboration times, or in the chat, or with the mic as well, because if we're a little bit of a smaller group here, that's going to be fantastic. We can do that sharing. We can create this network already, and you can connect with others beyond the session. We also, in our design of the session, we chose to make it 90 minutes because one of the things around a 45-minute or 60-minute time is that you just are so rushed. So one of the things we're grateful for is we have that extra time. So please don't be shy about the questions, or if you see something that you want to spend more time on, we are just so happy to do so today. And if there's any other agreements you'd like us to keep in mind today as we continue, please add them to the chat, and we will we'll add those in. I think we used to do a little bit of time around these online spaces when we started sessions like this, and I think over the last little while, we've all had way more experience on virtual platforms than we almost want some days. So just know that there's a chat, there's reactions that you can help us have some feedback. If you use your reactions, just use your mic. Don't worry about interrupting anybody. We love it. We love it when people are using their voices. There's Dean starting with his reactions already. That's cool. Also, one thing I love about Zoom now, the new version, is on the top right-hand corner of your video screen, you have ellipsis, the 3 dots there, you can hide your self view. So I find when I'm working with students, this is something very good for a lot of students. They don't like to come on camera because they're looking at themselves. So now we can reassure them that they can turn that off. So it's not sort of in your face all the time. So I just think that's a neat thing to share because it's fairly new. All right. So we are talking about synchronous and asynchronous learning. And we've been all innovating around different practices we're adopting. We've been searching the internet for lots of different tips and tricks. And one thing we wanted to try was a synchronous activity just at the beginning here. It's called a waterfall chat. And if Dean has a chance to put a link in the chat there to where I came up with this, I was searching for different strategies for chatting, but this strategy hopes to address the issue that for some of our learners, and sometimes, depending on the content that we address, it's really hard to keep up with a chat all the time. And so what we're going to ask you to do is take a moment of reflection, maybe 1 minute, to think about this question. What brings you to this learning? What are you hoping to get out of your time today? What kind of goal are you setting for yourself? What are you looking for? And type it in the chat, but don't hit enter. Okay, so we're going to take a minute to do that quietly. And then when that minute is up, we're going to ask everybody to hit enter, and we're going to get a waterfall of chats that allow us some time to reflect and look back on the thoughts of others. So let's try that. I will watch for 1 minute now. What brings you to this learning?
It's awesome that people actually did that. I was afraid someone would just out of habit type in and press enter. So that's
It's
good.
hard. It's so hard
That's
because
good that
your
they're
hand
like
is just, your hand hits
Yeah,
that
just
shift key.
yeah, you type and you hit enter, but we're not doing that this time, so that's great.
Mhm.
And it probably goes without saying, but anyway, like that's why I pasted the link in there, because these are ideas that you obviously you're going to be thinking, hey, maybe this might be a value to use with my students as well.
All right, that's our minute. So if you're ready, let's hit enter and let's let our chat messages kind of waterfall. And let's have a minute to look back over some of the thoughts of others. And if you're so inspired, you can connect with somebody around one of those ideas, either with your mic or in the chat. Oh, Amanda, we have a new teacher in our midst. Oh, I just want to go like this, Amanda. This has been the most challenging couple of years to be a new teacher and be on and offline and not have your support of your team with you. So way to go. That online life skills, I have a friend doing that role as well, and that's been a real challenge. So some ideas there, skills, community connections. Ooh, awesome. Yeah, reflections about last year, Jameson, right? You know, what are we going to take forward? Because it wasn't all stressful and crazy. There's been some highlights from last year. And what would we let fall away, and what will we bring on to the next year? Amos blended classes, hyperflex learning and instruction. Yeah, that idea of being in both spaces. And Danielle new to her role. So great. All right. Excellent. Yeah. Amanda, we're so glad you're here. So we were thinking about some of these same things that you're reflecting on. How are we using technology to empower students? What are we doing asynchronously and synchronously to provide rich learning experiences? And how are we designing that environment, right? And then some of us here might have been leaders, or maybe you work in your school in divisional meetings, and we've got Jameson, who's a TEL contact, so we know he works with a lot of different teachers. So how are we as leaders going to support this learning? Some of the things we've been thinking about. And you know, there's this, right? There's August angst. And I don't know, I hope your computer doesn't feel like this, but we have so much to do. And that idea of being an instructional designer has really been stretched for us in the last while. And as Dean pointed out, we're really not sure what's around the corner. So what are the core foundations that we need to address as designers of learning spaces that might not be our traditional face-to-face? What can we do to prepare for being sort of anywhere, anytime learning?
I think these are the kinds of questions, like if we just want to simplify it a little bit, and again, I'm going to be I'm going to be mindful of somebody like Amanda, who for her all of this is new, and so but for those of us, particularly those of us who have experience behind us, you know, we can all get very clouded, if you will, and muddled in our thinking. But it's sometimes so important to just to get down to the essentials. So when I think about what guides us, what do we already know about learning and learners? Like we know there's some things that we do know and believe about learning and learners. And then that second one is particularly near and dear to my heart is what do we know about building community? And that's when we think about building community, we think about it for our classrooms, we think about it for our schools, we think about it for our colleagues, right? There's things that we've learned and we know about this one. And then finally, what do we know about effective use of technology? Because this is something that is enabling. I mean, just think about the fact that had this pandemic happened, and it did happen, of course, we know in the Spanish flu when it came about, there was not this kind of technology available. So the ways in which people responded were very different. But of course, technology isn't just about dealing with a pandemic; it's about effective learning beyond that. And there's some super powerful examples of it, and there's some things that just distract us, and so we're constantly trying to engage those ones. But I just as without diving into these specifically, and again, if we had more time, each of these could be their own separate really conversations. We'll certainly touch on them as we go through, but that's our guide. And I would encourage you to just use these 3 questions as just a way to think about structuring your year and structuring the ways in which you go about your work.
Gotta hit unmute. Okay, we didn't want to go too deeply into research today because, as you have let us know here, you're mostly interested in some of those practical things. But in Ontario, over the last few years, we've kind of had a definition for what deeper learning is. And this came out of a research project over 3 years where $150 million went out from the Ministry of Education to all 72 school districts and school authorities. And the districts had the opportunity to have a lot of autonomy on what they wanted to study around what their technology needs were. And this competency document came out in 2016 as a result of a lot of that research that was going on. And so in our context, we kind of think of deeper learning as a couple of different things. One is that we have these domains of learning. We have the cognitive domain, the interpersonal, and the intrapersonal domain. And traditionally, sometimes we've been a little over-focused on cognitive items, our thinking skills and content, etc. And what we actually know about learning is that when we balance these 3 things, we sort of hit a sweet spot. And we get to what Pellegrino talks about as deeper learning. And you can think about some of the things that you've experienced as a learner yourself. Often it's the sports team that a person is on, or it's the theater production that someone does, or it's a passion project that a teacher allows them to really embrace these other 2 domains and bring it into their learning that makes something very powerful. The other thing we think about is if learning is deeper or deep learning, it actually transfers to other contexts. And so, Michael Fowen calls this learning that sticks, right? So when we learn things deeply, we can apply them and reflect on them in other domains. So one of the nice things about that discussion document and those domains is that we can actually break those out into outcomes, and then we can think about what are the action items that we might use as teachers. So you'll have all the links to some of these documents if you decide to go deeper. But Dean and I were thinking about, as designers, you really need to get to that action item, but you need to know that it's coming from a really good place. And so Ontario and Alberta and New Brunswick worked together when that discussion document first came out. And they worked together and came up with these 6 global competencies, which Ontario is now calling transferable skills. But, critical thinking and problem solving, innovation, creativity, and entrepreneurship, learning to learn, what was formerly called metacognition for us, collaboration, communication, and global citizenship and sustainability. And one thing that I think is pretty nice in the link that you'll receive there is they too CMEC, the Council of Ministers of Education, have this pan-Canadian framework now. And online, they also provide definitions, but they have these action-oriented student descriptors. So again, as a designer, as a teacher designer, I can look at this and say, oh, so are my students learning, for example, the second bullet on the right-hand side, are my students learning and are they learning from others? Are they contributing to the learning of others? Are they co-constructing knowledge? These are things I can think about as a teacher and think about how I might do that. Not going to go through this one very much right now, because we're going to refer to it a little bit later, but OECD has a really great document on the nature of learning, and also a piece around innovative learning environments. And they focus on these 7 principles of learning. So very similar to our focus in Ontario, what we've been doing for a long time. Learners at the center, we know it's social, we know that how you feel about learning has a big impact on your learning itself. We know that we don't all learn in the same way. We are different. We know we need to be challenging our students. We know about formative assessment as the most powerful kind of process of assessment, and building horizontal connections, which we'll talk about a little bit more. And I noticed in the chat that is the goal for some of us here today. So another resource for you as a designer might be to look at some of these things.
So when you think about, those 3 things that guide us, right? What we know about learning and what we know about building community, and what we know about effective use of technology. What we know about learning is that the medium itself is not, in this case, distance learning, talking about online learning, however, whatever phrase you want, it's not a negative. And this is from, if you're not familiar with John Hattie, the guru of certainly meta data. Like he's the guy that's takes all of the educational research and sees how do all of these different research pieces come together, and sort of has this comprehensive look at so many different things. But this is one pretty big idea, right? That this is not a factor in learning, whether or not someone's on, we hear people say things like, well, I'm not suited to online learning or whatever. And certainly we can all have preferences. Certainly I think we all probably, once we got to go back to our kids and worked in person, there was something powerful about that we loved and we missed and we're familiar with. But his point of it is that if you're just talking about actually learning, that's not the factor. There are other things that are factors. So when you think about some of the other high impact strategies that Hattie has, and maybe go to the next slide, Brenda. One of the studies, and he does all this stuff about so there's the scale there of a visible, and through his visible learning works, it looks like what things have the most impact on learning. And you can see those 2 top ones, right? Feedback and student-teacher relationships. Those are the things that have impact, not whether or not it's online, not whether or not it's whatever. Now, you might say, well, student-teacher relationship is more difficult online. It has its challenges for sure. So we are going to talk about some of the ways in which we can perhaps overcome that here. But these are the things that actually we know about learning, that learning requires, and feedback is one of those words which needs a lot of unpacking. And in fact, I think, Brenda, you and I will do that more on Wednesday, probably, when we have our session about students assessing, being assessors of their own learning, because that's a big part of it. So that's, again, a big idea, but that's just really important. And then the second thing, and just maybe the next slide there, Brenda, and I've used this quote often because it's this one of these simple ideas that perhaps maybe make people think differently, right? Like we have a classroom system when we could have a community system. And what that means to me anyway is that traditionally we have thought of our classroom as, here's these 4 walls and learning happens inside that space. And then we have another classroom where other learning will happen, and then we sort of jump around this hoop. And if you think about our grading, our system is designed to go from stepping from grade 1 to grade 2 and so forth through to the end. But using technology effectively is one way in which we actually can have a community system where those walls aren't a factor anymore. We can reach out to whomever we need to reach out to, and we can learn from whomever, whenever, and we're not bound by the fact that if a student has a particular interest and it's not part of the curriculum, or maybe it's above where they're at, that we would in any way hold them back. We would actually facilitate that and say, well, how can we do that? And how can we continue to learn with and from each other? And so there's a mindset shift that probably has to happen. And I believe that most of us are probably on this journey to some way, shape, or form. But that's, again, a significant difference. If you think of your classroom as a container that's boxed in, you've created, in many cases, undue limitations on learning. When we think of ourselves more as a community, we open ourselves to many, many new and interesting opportunities.
Mm-hmm. So we've been talking a lot. So along those lines of thinking about what we've been using as designers of learning. I know Jameson has referenced that book was actually his guide last year when he was creating. So maybe he will tell us a little bit more about that. But what I'm going to do is put this link in the chat, and we're actually going to go over to this Jamboard now. And it should be set to so that every one of you can be an editor. And Jamboard is a great tool for building community, either synchronously, like we're doing right now, live together, or this link could be shared with students, and it could be something that you do asynchronously. So let me see. I'm going to go to my first slide over here. Are you? Yep, we have some people getting in there. That is awesome. And so if there's anybody who has never used a Jamboard, I'm just going to go over a couple of key things here. So I've created a background slide here. You can see the slides in the deck here with that that arrow at the top. Okay, and how do I get back? That's weird. Okay, let me go there. Click back on the background to make it pop back up. And we have a bunch of tools over here. One of the nice ones that students seem to have some fun with is creating a sticky note. So you should be able to grab a sticky note or a text box and answer any of these questions. And please feel free, if a question doesn't resonate with you, go on to another slide, find somewhere to jump in, and please let us know, what have you been using as your ideas, people, or resources to guide you? What are affirmations of good practice have you noticed, either in your own realm or something that you saw someone else do? What's been effective for you and your students? What are your areas of growth? And any ahas you've experienced over recent times? So we'll give you a few minutes to do this. What do you think, Dean? Like 4 minutes? What do you think? How much?
3, 4, we'll see.
3 or 4 minutes? Okay. And I might just move some stickies over just to, because they tend to pile up on each other. Thank you.
I love that somebody mentioned job shadowing. That's pretty powerful.
How do I get that posted? How do I get that posted?
You should be able to just click on the background, I think, or just go, let me just see, I'm going to do one. Once you start to type in it, just click save.
It's on the left-hand side, Amos, right underneath the big arrow.
Okay, when I click it, nothing happens.
Are you, to make sure you're not on the actual screen that you're seeing on Zoom, that you click the link that was shared in the chat?
Oh, okay, sorry.
No worry.
That's okay.
Duh.
And then it should open in a new window for you.
Oh yeah, it does, yeah.
Okay, and then it is under the big arrow on the left-hand side, and a sticky should pop up. You can choose a color, and then when you write, you should be able to hit save.
Okay.
that a try. Let us know if that's not working for you.
I like the fact, Brenda, on the second Jamboard about affirmations. I mean, so many of those things, those are not new things. and yet,
No.
you know, it was like, okay, yes, I've done this stuff for a long time, or maybe you didn't do it as intentionally. And we realized, okay, like mental breaks. I was terrible. I admittedly, as a teacher, I would just go hard. Like we would just, like, it's 40 minutes, I'm going for 40 minutes. And like the research says, no, don't do that. Like give people breaks and stuff. And yet I didn't do it. I know I was terrible at it. And so
Yeah.
I just think, you know, maybe people are just, well, I'm sure people are smarter than I am. That's not a question, but maybe all this helped us to realize, like, okay, like we got to do this stuff. Like this matters.
It's funny, one of the educators that I was talking to is an educational assistant. So working with students with really unique challenges and sometimes behavioral challenges. And one of the greatest things about home learning for the students that he was working with was the fact that no one knew when he turned his camera off and got up and did some stretching or did his walk around, and he didn't stand out as different than anybody else. And that was just such a, you know, it's such a leveling factor, right? It's leveling the playing field for him. So yeah, really good good point.
And those are just every time somebody tells me a story like that, I file it under things that technology enables that you can't do normally, right? Like you can do, that's the one of, like, all of these things, like that's an advantage, that's another advantage. I see a lot of people, I saw somebody mentioning that they teach younger ones and they're going to spend more time developing the basics, you know. And as I think about the fact that nobody's quite sure how this is going to go, and whether or not we shift to online or people just get worried and pull their kids out, that's going to empower them to such a great degree, right? If they have those skills to be able to transition to feel more seamlessly online, they may still wish they were face to face, but it just is, it's like, we know that all the teachers who invested in powerful blended learning prior to the pandemic transitioned so much more smoothly than those who had never done any of it before.
Yeah. You know, references to UDL there, Universal Design for Learning, are great to see. And we actually took those slides out, didn't we, Dean? Oh my goodness. But if you go to cast.org, they're another resource that they're amazing around those action items. So when you're trying to think about what your student needs around demonstrations of learning, they actually give links and descriptors for what that could look like for you. So that's a really great one that somebody's pointed out. And then I'm looking at the person who put the anonymous surveys. You know, that is something, you know, there's one thing about online digital learning, I think, that is such a delight, is how open some students are to communicate with you, and you don't hear from them in face-to-face situations for a variety of reasons. And I remember seeing a Google video around a woman a new teacher, Amanda, a new teacher who was trying to Google Forms with her intermediate level students. And she had them telling so much about their personal situation and how they felt about learning that way, rather than coming up and having to, you know, negotiate a meeting. So that piece is really important too. Someone is, what is an EML document? Could someone share a little bit about that?
Yeah, EML's, it's a board document. I work in PDSP. So it's called Empowering Modern Learners, and it's basically a vision that our board has around, I mean, technology is certainly part of that, and access to technology is part of that, but we also talk about things like learning culture, assessments, you know, like 21st century skills, learning environments, models of learning, and so on. So that's definitely a big thing in our board.
Thank you, Christina. If anybody else has any questions about something else they're seeing, or want to know more, or anything else, like this is a good chance. This is why we do this, so you can learn from each other. And so feel free to grab the mic or the chat, and or even write it within the Jamboard. That's what actually, it was my question. What was the email? I wasn't sure what it was, so I just used the little text feature and drew an arrow. So interact is what we're saying.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, we will come back to that. Now, if I do that, oh, look at that, magically worked. Isn't that lovely when technology works the way you hope it does? Hope it's going to, okay. So, you know, as we think about what we're going to be designing with our students, and as Dean mentioned, we talk about what we know about our learners and then what we know about building community. You know, we were thinking about asynchronous and synchronous activities, and we were thinking about what would be our sort of like our givens. And we kind of think that in terms of our givens, in terms of any spaces we're using, whether it be face-to-face, blended, or online, we have to plan with our students at the center. And we sort of think about these three categories. The idea of building trust with students. So, you know, we know that if kids are feeling safe, if they're feeling connected, then we can get to that purposeful work. So we feel that identity and belonging is really critical. We feel that agency is also super important. So students having voice and choice in their learning, that we see them as partners, that they can make some judgments about their learning, as well as what they would like to spend their time doing. That we help them develop that agency through self-regulation and just-in-time levels of support, these kinds of things. And as you mentioned, Dean will be talking a little bit more about that on Wednesday. And then we talked about, you know, being really sensitive to the fact that that idea of deep learning means that if learning isn't relevant to us and we're never going to use it, or we're only going to learn it just in case we need it, we miss out on that really big piece of powerful learning that can transform the classroom. And, you know, I heard really early on from someone asking, what's your new front door? And I thought this was a really interesting thing to think about, because we all, as teachers in a face-to-face place, really, really, really value the relationships. And we spend lots of time designing our classroom and showing students, you know, teaching those routines and showing students how to use the materials and the space that we have. That takes, you know, I spend a lot of time teaching grade 2 to 4, and it takes 4 to 6 weeks to get that rolling. And so regardless of whether you're online or face-to-face, you have to figure out, how are students going to get to know you? How are they going to know what you value? How are they going to get to know each other? What active roles will they have in determining what that looks like, your learning environment that is? And I think one of the really interesting things about the situation we're in now, as we go back to face-to-face learning, and we've just had this experience of the sudden switch to virtual, what could we do in our face-to-face time that with blended experiences to make the transition smoother if it happens again? So someone had mentioned there in the Jamboard, using other people resources in your building. How can you set some good routines around technology use that could support you as you make a transition back? And so, you know, identity and belonging, as we've kind of mentioned before, we're big fans of community building. You know, learning online and applying digital citizenship skills in a way that, you know, you're going to introduce tools because you want students expressing themselves and using them to demonstrate learning. Not only are they fun and engaging and build community, but you're really going to use them in your practice. And, you know, there are some amazing educators from Ontario who are doing just this. So I hope people follow a PL teacher, Tina Zita, because she has all kinds of really great ideas around actually using images in learning. So, you know, one that I just love is, as you get to know students this year, and a blended activity you could do is have them create a flat lay. We know students love Instagram, and they could create a flat lay all about themselves instead of some of the other traditional ways that we might
Good afternoon,
might
Mr. Brave. I went to Port Elgin, Austin speaking.
get to
Yes,
know
good
each
afternoon.
other.
I was just wondering,
Oops.
I just
I'm gonna
wanted
just
a,
mute
they were
Amos
gonna
for a
update my
second.
confirmation for my
Can you
stay
do
there this
that,
weekend.
Dean? I
And they hadn't-
can't. There we go. Thank you. So that was one of the things that we would share. Also, why wouldn't you start using video? Yeah, Liz, I love it as well. Tina is a whiz at using images for learning, so check her out for sure. Flipgrid, if you've never used Flipgrid before, it's around video communication. So why not start using that right at the beginning of the year and get kids comfortable with using it for their learning, and use supports in the classroom, in the school, to help you, your TL, your certs, your EAs. We've had a lot of tools like this one. Big Huge Labs is another one I use a lot for posters and these nice sports cards that you can create, and students don't need to have they don't need to have an actual account to use it. So they just save things to their computer. So another really good way to start using those resources. So we thought we could try one since we're building community here. So this time, if you're familiar with which ones doesn't belong, we used to start every staff meeting with one of these activities in my school. And it's a divergent thinking activity, and a lot of the content is around math. So it's that idea that we can have a very creative approach to math. It's not always about just having just one answer. So I really love that. I've chosen an image one for us to use today. So this is another one you could do synchronously or asynchronously, and we'll put the link to our Google slide deck in the, oh, wrong link, hang on a second. Let's get that for you. We're going to move over to a link, and there will be, I put a few copies of this slide in there for you already. So let's see if I can just flip over here. Here we go. And so we're going to play by copying a slide. If you'd like to change the background color, that sometimes helps when you're doing these kinds of class activities and you want to just delineate who's working on which slide. But you could also put your name on it with the text box up here. If you have any questions about how to use this, please reach out and ask. But take a look. Look at these three benches, chairs, tables, whatever you would call them. What do you think? How would you say which one doesn't belong? And you can do more than one if you have more than one thought. Give you a couple quiet moments to think. All right, looks like we've got, yeah, we've got a gifted group here. We've got lots of different ideas. Awesome. We've got, I'm always amazed at the different approaches people take to do this. And I've seen people come up with 20 plus unique about that, 20 different takes on it. So, all right, lots of fun. Anybody excited about sharing theirs? Dean, what did you come up with?
I like coming up with more than one. So I did the one that looks like it's only designed for 4, and then the one underneath. Because I was thinking that one on the bottom left might be a little bit lonely. No one maybe picked it, but I thought it was the only one that had sort of a curvature to it. Everything else was very straight lines. This one had a curved line to it.
Right. I had someone say that was the only one photographed with a fisheye lens. Would that do that to
I mean,
don't
it
know,
could.
that
I
was
guess you
somebody
could
who
make
knew.
the argument that it is straight, but to me it seems like it's bent, but maybe not. I didn't zoom in enough, maybe.
There's Jameson's, like yours too, Jameson. I don't know if you can grab the mic, but he's saying they all look like, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, initially I kind of gravitated towards the park bench, but then as I was looking at it a little bit more, I went, well, that would fit 3, as do the other 2 images on the left. And then looking at the just the seating, and as I was typing my answer, I kind of had that aha. I'm like, and there's also more that I could add, such as it's the only one with the table. And then I was looking at other people's ideas, and just again, it's incredible how we all look at it, look at the same pictures, and then there's just so many different reasons and rationale for why we choose what we chose.
Excellent. Is there anybody else who'd like to talk about their choice? Or
I think the thing I love about this activity too, Brenda, is that I'm a big fan of anything that can be done at a variety of grade levels with a variety of learners. Like this you could do with kindergarten students. And as adults, you can see our thinking around this one is being challenged as well. So anytime you can come up with something like that, I feel like that's sort of like the golden kind of activity. Like this works with anybody, right?
right.
And it also focuses on, as much as you say this is, and I know it was designed as a mathematical exercise, that's not really the limitation. That's very limiting if you just think of it that way. Like it can be utilized in sort of lots of different contexts.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that I love about this is that you could see that, after you as a teacher came up with a couple of examples, how cool would it be for a student to then step in and do one for the next week? Or, it's so easy for the students to become creators too, not just consuming, but really taking their, it's that agency piece, right? It builds engagement. So, why not leverage things like this? I've had one group, and I don't think anybody mentioned it here. One group noticed, or one person noticed, that the bases are all concrete except for that bottom right. It's sitting on grass. So that was another difference there. So I don't know if any of our group brought it.
I was actually going to say that the top left has red bases. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's just so many things you can do with it. So feel free to make a copy of that and use it to your heart's content. Okay, so I'm going to go back to our slides here, and you should be seeing, is that the slide deck again, Dean? Thumbs up if you got that.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, great. So let's go. And I think I'm turning it over to you.
Yeah, I just want to share a few things around my own experience when building community and in an online class. And so just quick context, I first started teaching online in 2007. And if you're, I think back to 2007, we didn't have all the tools. We didn't have Zoom back at that time. And so a lot of things were a lot more difficult to do. But it was really important to me that I thought about how could I do this? Like, what is the ways I can connect to my students in ways? And the other thing is, a lot of the courses I taught were very short. They were 6-week courses, and so, it would be very easy to simply say, you know what, it's too difficult to really build a connection with people in that short of time. I'm just going to post the content. They're going to do it and all that stuff. I just didn't want that. So it was really important for me to do that differently. So, and I think in general, thinking about that, I think the whole idea of using video each week is a really, really critical way to connect to our students and with each other. So I think that's the next slide. Just again, and I would suggest that this isn't necessarily related to a couple people in the waiting room here. I'm just going to let them in here. This is not related to online versus not. Like, I think you should do this whether or not you are teaching online or whether you are teaching face-to-face, like having video announcements, because there's some powerful things to do. If you go to the next slide, you'll just see a quick little screenshot of some of the modules that I've taught in the past and how I would always have a weekly update. And I think I think with the original slide deck, there was an actual clip of the video, but I think it'll just show up. It doesn't have to be a video here, but the point of it was I would have these videos and they would cover 4 specific things, 3 or 4 specific things. 1, it would sort of review what we had done the previous week. 2, it would acknowledge student sort of insights and successes in general, just not specifically, but as a class, hey, we did really well in this. This was a success. 3, it would look ahead to what's coming up. So this is the thing that's coming up. And the 4th thing, which would happen pretty usually at the beginning of it, I would intentionally film this in a different place in my world. So this was actually a video of me watering my plants. So the video actually starts with me watering my plants and talking for 30 seconds about my plants. And then the next time it might have been me taking my dogs out for a walk or washing the dishes. And all of that was like, this is an affordance that I can use to connect with my students at a level that I probably wouldn't do that if I wasn't in there face to face. I might talk to them about my flowers or whatever else, but I probably wouldn't show them. I might not show them a video. So this was just a way, and these were all like, you can see sort of the length there, anywhere 2 to sometimes or 7 minutes would be pretty long, but the way that I would do that just weekly, and I think, isn't it powerful? Because I think the thing that we forget sometimes is because, yeah, I don't like seeing my face on video. No one likes this. No one's excited about doing this. But your students are. They want you. They want to see you. They want to get to know you. And as much as you don't think that's important, it's a big deal. And again, people have to be comfortable with what they share and what they don't share. I get that. So you determine and set your own boundaries. That's up to you. But to whatever degree you are willing to make a connection with your students through who you are as a person, I just would encourage you to do that and share that with them in some, even if it's just a small way. And again, I'm watering plants. Who cares, right? Like, it's not a big thing. I'm just, the fact that I'm doing something that they might do or know somebody that does makes the difference. A person that I would really look to in the next slide, I think, this slide, I won't play this video for you, because if you refresh it, it is, but I'm going to put the link in the chat. Michael Wesch has kind of been my go-to person for an online presence. He does such really, really good work with using video in powerful ways. And I think the next transition there will show that's the breakdown of those 10 online teaching tips. And so you can see them about greeting them at the virtual door. Brenda already talked about that. He talks about how to do that in a virtual context. He talks about using video introductions. He talks about the way in which he uses discussion, that he doesn't waste their time, that he reads to them. This is something that blew me away. He's a university professor. He reads aloud to his students. And he talks about how and why he does that. Like, these are not brand new ideas, but they're powerful in the way that he sets them up. So I'd highly encourage you to take some time to watch that video and pay attention. Michael Wesch is just a phenomenal anthropology teacher out of Kansas State University, who is definitely one of my sort of go-to people when it comes to creating an online presence.
Nice, thank you. Katina has arrived. Do you want to take a minute and just say hi, Katina? This might be a good
Sure.
point. Yeah, because we
Hi.
talked. Hi.
Good afternoon, everyone. I do apologize for my late arrival. I had a little bit of a fire drill that I had to take care of, but great to see you here today for our first session with our amazing OECM, Dell, and ALP partnership. Thank you for being here and being part of it all. And we welcome you to all of the different sessions that we're having going forward. And then please tell your colleagues and your peers and friends, family, neighbors who you think might be interested in these courses, because this is new for Ontario and we really want to make sure that it's a success for you. And any sort of feedback that we can do to improve and make it even better for your needs in the classroom, especially just in this very unique time. So anyways, that's it for me. I am the education strategist for Dell Technologies. I work across Canada for both K-12 as well as post-secondary. So thank you again, and I'll pass that back over to Dean and Brenda. And just so you know, I'll do the lucky draw at the end. I'll make sure there's prizes.
I was gonna say, pay attention. Katina will do that draw. So if you haven't already filled it out, I just put the link back in there again, and she'll do something at the end to do that. And as well, we are going to give you a little bit more detailed survey at the end that we would love for you to do just as Katina has mentioned, to give us that feedback around, hey, this is great, we love this, and we like this, and we'd like more of this, and maybe less of this. We're open. We're here to learn with you. So thank you again for that. Okay, Brenda, let's keep the show going.
And can you just check that link that you put in? I think it's the YouTube one twice, but I'll let you put that in there.
It is. So I'll fix that. Thanks.
Okay. So one of the things, again, we've been talking about, conversations and nurturing conversations. And I think that was one of the most challenging things for people that I was talking to. I remember one grade 7 teacher saying that she used to have show and tell, and it would be like, go and find something purple. I'll give you 2 minutes. And kids would run off, and then that would get them turning their cameras on. Like, she was really, challenged by how we can do conversation in online spaces. So just exactly what Dean was saying, the research shows that there are kind of 3 aspects to being present online. So there is that affective piece. The kinds of things he was talking about, watering his plants and his pets, etc., can help you express that affective piece around yourself and encourage model for students how to do so. Then there's the interactive piece, evidence of them actually contributing and doing the work and attending and showing, checks for understanding, showing their thinking and responding to others. And then there's that piece that's around the sense of belongingness, which we've been talking about, having common goals. Right. So, that togetherness that takes a while in a face-to-face classroom and takes a while in a blended space. And so I don't know about you, but have you ever taken an online course and, there's the discussion post and everybody races to reply, and, it isn't exactly discourse. It's kind of parallel play, I call it, where everybody puts their description in their response in the discussion post. So sure enough, it ends up to be kind of like a monologue versus a dialogue if we're not careful. And with all of our digital tools and the ability to post a lot of links and a lot of resources, we can sometimes have this, parallel conversation piece going on, more about me than it is us. And so we have to teach a different way to develop your voice online, to be questioning, to accountable talk online, digging deeper with ideas. So there's all of that going on in our blended spaces. One of the delightful things, though, so just skip that. One of the delightful things that I think that I've experienced, and maybe for you too, is, those students, there are students, and I would include myself in this group, and maybe that's why I sort of gravitated to online tools in the 90s, is that there are students where you'll hear a lot more from them online, right? They won't be putting their hand up, they won't be speaking out in class, and so that is just such a bonus. And if that happened to you at all, we'd love to hear from you, because that's one of those stories that I just think are amazing. So asynchronous learning is any learning that happens happens independent of the teacher, pretty much, with or without technology, right? So we do still have asynchronous activities, when we're face to face, whenever students are doing something outside of where you're at. So in the chat, what would you say your number is? Do you have, where are you with that kind of, with those kinds of activities? Are you a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4, would you say? 2, 2s and 3s, yeah. Getting there, okay. Yes, I love that, because I think really it should say 4. You might even be feeling expert, but you're still always searching for more strategies and just getting better at everything. So good, lots of 2s and 3s. So if we look at some of the examples of what we might, and Caitlin Tucker has a really great blog that has a lot of support for people moving into online teaching. So if you wanted to check out her blog, you'll have her slides. What do we need to add here? So they might be, for asynchronous learning, you might be assigning some reading. Students might be taking notes. They might be watching something. They could be listening to something on their own. You could have created a curation of some resources you'd like them to explore. They could be reflecting and documenting their learning, practicing and reviewing, or engaging in online discussions. That is the asynchronous kind, right? What else might we want to add? Any thoughts? What I don't see there is a lot of outdoor learning. So that might be an addition that I would add to what she's got there, because I know with our outdoor classrooms, many teachers tried to, provide a lot of those options. Yeah, land-based learning, Katina, right. What are the advantages of asynchronous? There is a high degree of flexibility, right? Students can choose very often when and how they do things. They could maybe control the pace of their learning. Liz, right, the drama, gym, music, movement breaks, that kind of thing. So that might be one that I add to Caitlin's, but we have a good understanding of what we're talking about when we talk about asynchronous rather. Okay, so the asynchronous portion. So Amanda, because they had their students, they had their kids online at the same time and they were asynchronous. I think if I'm understanding you correctly, so it is that flexibility, right? About when you're going to be doing your learning. Cool. Synchronous learning is online or distance learning that happens in real time. So it's what we're doing today. Our chats are synchronous. Our Jamboard is synchronous. We played our Which One Doesn't Belong. That was synchronous. And our conversations here are synchronous. What would you say is your 1, 2, 3, or 4 experience with that? Many of us might be more experienced all of a sudden than we thought. Yeah, nobody has very little. Got our new teacher. She's even got 2.5, Amanda. Way to go. And Amos too. Yeah, learning more, but have some experience. So no one is, I would say that's very different than what was happening 2 years ago or a year and a half ago. We had a lot of people who would have been new, very, very new with no experience. So this is the kind of learning that's happening at the same time and in the same place, that students can access the contents and resources at specific times. They may have control over some of the pace of their learning. Like we're going to have an example of that in a second, and where you're going to get a chance to do that. But here are some of Caitlin's examples. So let's have a look at these and see what we might add now since we've had our pandemic experience. You're going to be building relationships. As a teacher, you're going to be modeling a lot of sessions, possibly. You're going to be experiencing, breaking your students into small groups and working with small groups. That was, I think, a big challenge at the beginning for teachers to sort that one out with new tools. Yeah, right, Christina. Once we figured out that we didn't have to do whole group instruction all the time, just like in the classroom, we know we need it. So perfect. Coaching, guided practice, That fostering collaboration among students, that could be a whole 1 year endeavor there. In my case, it feels like a career-long venture. I just love fostering collaboration. I'm always learning about that. Real-time conversations, and of course, along with those come digital citizenship practices. And, you know, I used to love having moderated spaces. So I knew that I could really just see some of the posts before they got posted to the big group, so I could help students develop that online voice and know about appropriate use. And real-time feedback might be synchronous. Anything else that might be missing there that you would add? I'm just looking at Christina. Yeah, so you're using Google Meet and Teams. Yeah, so we know there's a different variety of ease with some of these tools, correct? Yeah, it's difficult, but we're working around it. And I know they're always coming up with improvements, so that is awesome. Okay, so Dean, I'm looking at the time and I'm wondering if we might do our synchronous choice activity that we were thinking of doing. Should we?
I think so, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So we had a challenge because I'm just going to show you that we had a lot of practical examples of things to share with you. So rather than all talk those through, we thought we would provide some time for you to explore and reflect on some of those ideas. So this was kind of a design decision because we wanted to allow people to explore at their own pace. We want you to have the links for later to explore. And also we wanted to surface some of the group thoughts and questions without them coming from us. So we want your reflections on that. So I'm going to put a link in the chat to, and let me just grab it here, a slide deck. All right, it looks like so. Should be open for you to edit actually, because we're going to ask you to kind of think about, I'm back to my slides, hopefully, here we go. You know, these are some of the things that we're always thinking about, you know, when we're designing. We've talked about voice and choice, you know, equity and inclusion, who can access our resources and be participating and who can't. We need to be thinking about that. What are the barriers? How can we make things multimodal? You know, assistive technologies, critical thinking, social emotional learning, as you've mentioned already, some of you, participation, well-being. Oh, this is a lot to think about when you're designing for online and blended spaces. And one huge one for me is, who is the audience for the learning? And what I've learned, as Dean mentioned earlier, the computer is like a portal to the world. We have so many affordances now to bring other learners in with us, experts. We can go on virtual field trips, all of that kind of thing. So if the audience isn't just the teacher for the learning, it can just bump up engagement. So what we'd like you to do is think about it from your own lens, which ones of these things really are front of mind for you, and look through those slides. Let me pop over. We're going to give you, I don't know, we were going to say 10 minutes. Do you want to say 8, Dean? 10? Oh, look at that. Just gonna switch.
I put it on there, but that doesn't mean anything. We can stop
Okay.
we can stop at the 2-minute mark.
Okay. So
Just
this is
gives
where,
people a little counter.
yeah, this is where we want to crowdsource some of your ideas. So every slide will, and some of them are projects, like this first one is 3 slides and that's one project and then it's switched. But in every note section, there is a questions spot for you to write and insights of how you might use it. So if you're so inspired, you could just browse now and look through some of these examples and have a question for us when we're finished. Or if you feel inspired to add your thoughts or something similar you did, let's crowdsource the expertise in the room and really explore some of the ideas. You don't really have to go in order, except for in the first couple.
So we'll shut our mics off and probably turn our cameras off here even for a bit. And well, I already did turn my camera off. But we'll come back probably when there's about a minute left on the timer, just to sort of do a bit of a wrap up, or maybe 2 minutes left on the timer, but this is your time to explore and dig and just take some time to reflect on some of these opportunities. So we'll see you in a bit. Just go back here.
Recording in progress.
And
Others?
I
Go ahead,
want to
Brenda.
point one out because Karen, my friend Karen shared, where is it? It's the buddies slide. Slide 36. So she is a secondary teacher and she has a great buddy system that she starts right off the bat. And it's a lot to organize who's there and who's not when you're trying to do multiple things. And so I really thought that was a great tip, is to have these buddies that you set up, and then very quickly, attendance can be taken. Like, is anybody's buddy missing? And those kinds of really practical logistical tips. Sometimes those just make your day. I don't know. Just wanted to point that one out. All right.
Hi, Shannon here.
Hi, Shannon.
I teach at a school for learning disabled students, and I found the live tours and online field trips really interesting because it would be a really good way to pre-teach social skills, which is something that we talk about a lot at that school. Or if they just weren't physically able to go, of course, it would be wonderful to be able to just show them environments and settings that they can't get to. But I thought it'd be really applicable in that it would personalize it if they could see you going through the environment and showing them how to behave and what to do there. And then might make it a little more real for them and a little more valuable as a pre-teaching tool anyways.
Mm-hmm. Good point. And so many of our community partners might have the time to do something virtually like that only takes them 15 or 20 minutes of their day, as opposed to actually visiting your school, right? So there's I think we have to think outside the box around connecting with other people. Great, thanks for sharing. So I'm gonna I have to share my other screen, sorry. There we go, are we back to where we think we are? Yeah, so we hope that this is what we were hoping that you would be able to do at the end of our session, that you would understand for sure synchronous and asynchronous learning, and then maybe you've picked up a few things that would help you in your design of your space this year, and connect to some new technologies and some new people. So we hope to see you in other sessions, but please let us know in the chat if there were which number sort of you found was helpful to you in this session. And then I'm going to maybe ask Dean to share the last part. And prizes.
Well, let's do the survey first, and then I'll let Katina give away the prizes. So if you go to the next slide, and I put a link in the chat, but that is a link to our survey. And so we would again be very, very grateful for you to fill it out. And even if you click on it now, so it's open in a tab, and because I don't want to say it's like 2 seconds. It's not 2 seconds. It's probably, I don't know. You could probably do it in, I don't know, 3 minutes if you really were fast. It's a little bit of time, but anyway, that would be great. But that really helps us. And again, that information that you see there probably has to get filled in at some point, or just referenced, so that you know that it's a virtual leadership and Brenda and myself are leading it, and it's a one-day workshop. That's just sort of helps it to be categorized. But we definitely are going to look at this data and try to get better. And again, 90 minutes is tough, but we are so grateful that you all took time out of a wonderful summer time to learn with us. And we want us to stay connected. So I hope you paid attention to the other people that were in our session today, and perhaps they could be a resource to you as well. But thank you so much. Katina, did you do your little wheel of spin, or how did you do this?
I did. I took off the names that people entered into the form, so thank you for that. And I'm not sure if everybody's comfortable. I've got the spinning wheel in front of me, and I'm just going, and all your names who entered it are on the wheel. So what I can do is just tap and spin. I'll announce the winner if that's all right with everybody. Here we go. Susan Chapman is a winner. So congratulations to Susan.
So by the way, Katina, what is it that Susan wins so that we can then at other sessions they could come to another session and have another chance? What does Susan get?
Yes, she is going to get a digital gift card. We're still working on, depending on where the person is from, it's going to either be an Uber Eats, if it's in an Uber Eats area, or an Amazon card. So that's why we wanted to make sure that that we do it that's appropriate for you, because if you're not in an area of Uber Eats, we don't want to give you Uber Eats, but if you're more of an Amazon person, we can do that too. So thanks for clarifying there. I have one more spin of the wheel.
Oh,
Here we go.
wow, another one.
Well, let's do a bonus. It's our first one. We're excited. Okay, here we go. And it is Amanda, and apologies if I mispronounce, but it's Balick, I believe. Amanda Balick.
That's so appropriate. I was hoping she'd win. She's a brand new teacher, Katina, like a brand new teacher.
Gosh, yay,
Yeah.
absolutely for our
Yeah.
new teachers. That's
So
great.
that's awesome that she wins.
All right, so thank you. I'll be in touch with both of you ladies, and thank you very much for playing along.
Thanks everyone for coming and learning and sharing.
Thank you so much. You guys were amazing. And again, come to another session. Brenda and I will be back on Wednesday. We're going to talk about assessment. We'll have fun then. And again, there's tons more. You guys have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your summer and a great start to your school year. Bye-bye.